Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Peter Burns III on the line, and he is founder of Burns Funding. Peter, welcome to the show.
Adam, thank you very much.
All right, Peter. So you and I have been talking now for a good couple of weeks, and I've been preparing for this interview. And I'll tell you that I'm excited to have you on the show. You definitely are an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. You have quite a history in the space, and we will go into that. And today's overall topic, really providing access to capital, funding, and the idea of even having passive income. I mean, a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of executives that watch this show, and we have some great content on the agenda for today. And we'll start this episode, Peter, the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Peter, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Peter, what mission matters to you?
I enjoy helping people with the resources that I've accumulated over the years and mentorship. I learn what not to do as well as what to do. And I learn how to let people help themselves with my assistance. That's my whole thing. At this stage of my life, I'm 65 now. I've been an entrepreneur full-time, almost 50 years, started hundreds of businesses, and I'm not stopped. Now it's my turn to help people to start businesses with my resources, capital, and knowledge to empower them. And that's really what I'm doing.
So first off, love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and just the idea that, you've been blessed and now you've in turn, found ways that are mutually beneficial and that benefit the market and for you also to be a blessing to others and entrepreneurs. I think it's awesome. But you said, 50 years of entrepreneurship, where did this entrepreneurial kind of bug or where did this all start for you?
Sure. Well, it's actually longer than that. If I'm 65, it's actually been something like, almost 60 years. The spark I got was on a golf course where I would walk with my dad. We lived in a really nice area, and the country club was right up the street. So I would follow my dad while he played golf. I was too young. I was about 6 or 7 to play. But I'd noticed that people would hit their balls into a water hole trying to reach the green. And I watched as these people sort of looked for their golf ball, but didn't really. And that kind of sparked something to me because I knew that a golf ball, even back then, 60 years ago, was still $1.25 for a brand new Titleist. So I literally saw them throwing money away in the ponds and not bothering to get wet and go in them. So I waited till we finished the round. My dad went into the clubhouse. I ran home and got my waders and a little lemonade stand I set up right there where they hit their balls in the water. Then what would happen is I'd wander in, I'd sell them back their golf ball for less than the 125, but sort of the price of goods was pretty cheap, and the lemonade. And they thought it was all cute, and they all bought their golf balls back. And I made $50 in a couple hours, and until they threw me off the golf course. To take your child off the golf course. And but it dawned on me that at $2 a week in allowance, I just paid for 6 months. And I didn't think like that really because I was kind of young, but I thought, if you invent something or come up with a clever idea that people, a service or product, and people pay you for it, you got a business. And that stimulated literally an entire lifetime of entrepreneurial ventures since then. So I did everything along the way, high school, junior high. I'd hike during lunch hour downtown and buy a bunch of candy and sell it to everybody else for like 20 times markup for dessert because they weren't going to go away. And then my parents belonged to a beautiful club in Connecticut, and they had a beach club component. And I would rent out the beach club and have 1,000 of my best friends show up for these keg parties, which I charged $20 for. And I'd be making like 50% or $10,000 I'd make as a high school
Wow.
student and having blast. And of course, you're very popular when you're throwing 1,000-person keg party. I used to have, professional bands. I hired Marshall Tucker before they cut their first album. I
Mm.
used to have hot dogs, hamburgers. I hired an entire police force off duty to make sure everything was totally cool and take everybody's keys. And, it was way before DUIs and all this kind of stuff, but we made sure everything was as protected as possible. But I learned supply and demand. I learned cash businesses. I learned all of these functions that people learn in academia, to go to college and learn. And I did it in person. So it's like such a different way of learning. You actually, it encompasses my entire strategy of ready, fire, aim. That's how I operate. And that's what I've been doing my whole life.
Man, what a great story. And when I think about like even some of those, the earlier stories, the golf balls and like everything else leading up to today, it's really interesting to me to see how everybody's entrepreneurial journey. I mean, they're all different, right? Some people sold candy, some people sold baseball cards, some started later in their life. But I'd be interested to hear this. So we'll kind of segment maybe some of this entrepreneurship question. We'll get more complicated. We'll get more advanced and maybe talk about some other issues, but let's just keep it at the younger entrepreneur for the moment. And I don't mean just age. I mean, just maybe the less experienced. What are some of those attributes or those things that you think allowed you to know pretty early on that, entrepreneurship might be for me? Because I feel like people struggle with this. Maybe they have an idea, they have something they want to do, but they're like, is this for me or is this not?
Well, also it's really your upbringing. And if you want to follow the pattern that your family has set up, in my particular case, it's all very corporate. I mean, my grandfather, you go back to Peter the First, he was the top executive at Sterling Drug, Bear Aspirin. And he worked there 35 years. And
so corporate,
and he didn't get his quote unquote entrepreneurial venture until he was forced into retirement because he had a retirement age of 65. And he had accumulated so much stock and options that he was going to have to sell a great deal of his holdings of 35 years to pay the IRS taxes. My family's never been really excited about the IRS, like most people aren't either. But and this is the story that's often repeated in my family, which is remarkable. So you're too young, Adam, but I actually waited in line for gas. And the rest of America did too, even odd days. This is when OPEC decided to flex their muscles. And, the thing that got me is that the sole reason why they have any money anyway. We fields, we might, and then all of a sudden now they're cutting us off. So our government got really pretty angry. And what they passed to avoid this in the future was the oil depletion allowance. Now, the oil depletion allowance took American investors in American gas and oil products. If you invested in the approved list of the providers, the wildcatters and all the other kind of stuff, you got a 7-to-1 write-off. So if you put in $1 million, you got $7 million worth of tax benefits, which were retroactive. If you'd paid taxes in excess way back then, you got to get that money back or offset future income. Well, my granddad, looking at how much he had to pay the IRS in taxes on things that he had earned that was passive income of, accumulating options and stuff. He said, the hell with this. He's going to roll the dice on everything. He put all the money he was going to have to pay the IRS into an approved wildcatter named Yule Patrick. He was a Texan, wildcatter. And Granddad gambled saying the worst that could happen is I'll lose all my money and get packed 7 times. Well, damn if he didn't turn Patrick Petroleum into the largest independent oil company in the world at one time and a member of the New York Stock Exchange. Granddad made $50 million 50 years ago, 60 years ago,
Wow.
which there was no Forbes 400, but if there were, we'd be at the top of the food chain. So even though my family had lived very comfortably, and my father was a very prominent advertising executive on Madison Avenue, and there's actually a television series that's the composite of my father's life called Mad Men. And my brother produces that because my brother, who was a total corporate guy, bought Lionsgate Entertainment with a partner about 15 years ago. And Mad Men was one of their 30 or 40 television series. So my brother Kevin, the other younger Burns brother, it manages like $5 billion in private wealth. You have to have 20 million just to be his client. And they both do spectacular, but they're all a bunch of suits, right? They have stockholders, they have investors, they have clients, they have SEC, IRS. They've got everything in the world that I don't want to have anything to do. My world is comprised of creating new business opportunities and placing the individuals that I fund and mentor into small businesses. Because in America, like the world really, everybody worships at the corporate altar, but people forget every single business started from an entrepreneur's creativity and spunk to get it going and to turn it into what it actually is now. So I focus on the startups. I'm what's known as a serial startup entrepreneur, and I wouldn't change it for anything in the world.
What draws you to that space? Because I feel like the type of person that's in it for that seed investor, that person that wants the new idea, like what draws you to that space? Because some are obviously much more drawn to, let's just say further down the line,
Sure.
whether it's investment or otherwise. Like what do you like about that space?
I think it's the excitement and the creativity. I think it's the novelty of coming up with a really cool idea and seeing it come to fruition. Once it gets set, I just put everybody in charge, and I don't have anything to do with the management of it. But I mean, like I came up with this really cool idea because I'm terrified of sharks, to the point where I didn't put my foot in the ocean here in the Pacific Ocean when I moved here. And I won't, because we have a huge amount of great white sharks out there. And it's it's almost like I'm just waiting for them to pounce on me if I went in, even though the odds
are Peter.
astronomical. I get it. And I grew up on the water. I grew up on Nantucket and Sanibel Island. You know what? I just won't do it. So then I started reading about these great whites that washed up on shore in Africa, and no one could know what the hell happened, because a great white is 20 feet long and they're incredible predators. But something was a bigger predator. And it turns out that orcas eat great whites. They flip them on their back, stun them. They open them up surgically, and they eat their livers and their hearts because they're very, very iron rich.
Wow.
And then the bodies had been sinking, so no one knew that the great whites were being attacked and eaten. Well, it turns out that orcas have been doing this for a while when they figured out that, hey, sharks taste pretty good and we can go eat them because we can do whatever we want. Well, it turns out that where Mr. Orca has visited, there are no sharks. So all these shark cage companies where they lower you and try to get the sharks to, bite you and stuff like that, they couldn't stay in business anymore because there were no great white sharks because they fled the scene. So then I said, you know what? Is there a way to recreate the pheromones of an orca so that people or sharks think that they're in the area and they'll stay away? While I was researching that with a marine biologist who had developed this, I found another marine biologist that had perfected the audio taping of orcas on the hunt. They sound like humans screaming, and they played the soundtrack underwater, and seals, which are naturally afraid of orcas, would leave 6 miles, 10 miles away. So I thought, what if I can combine these different elements and shark-proof all the beaches where people have been attacked or their economies are dependent upon people coming and actually wanting to swim, even though it's such a rare occurrence. I mean, your chances of getting hit by lightning or killed by a dog or more. The fact is we're terrified. It's a primal fear. And if I can alleviate that fear and actually go swimming again, I would like that. So that's really one of my things I'm going to work on. But I need a marine biologist, preferably a millennial queen, so I can put into this business, and this can be her job. to research and do it. Now, what if I could come up with not just saturating the waters with the sounds and all this kind of stuff? What if I could come up with a personal shark repellent that actually works? Because sharks are terrified. All sharks are terrified, not just great whites. So anyway, that's kind of like how my mind goes. Find a problem that can profit, and that's your solution, and then create a business around it. But I need people to do that. So I'm willing to throw my money and my mentorship and whatever other resources that I have behind it, but I need more people to come to me and take me up on my offer.
So tell me more about the model, like the model of how you accomplish this. Because I think it's interesting that you have access to capital, you have access to ideas, and you need talented people. So tell me more about the model.
So over the years, I got really good at raising money. And I did that because no one would give me any money. My family, very wealthy, but it was like, they didn't just hand me a check and say, "Oh, Peter, great idea. Here's $1 million." That's not how it works. They said, "Okay, we've given you the great upbringing, the schooling. You've had every imaginable benefit. Now go do it. You want to do something, grab it." And they did that with all of us in my family. There's 3 sons. I'm the oldest. 2 other brothers and a sister who married investment bankers. They all did the traditional route. I went off on my own at 17, the military and all this good stuff. So my model is pretty simple. I have accumulated relationships to the tune of about $1.5 billion worth of capital. And this is debt capital. And what I'm able to do is aggregate this, and then using my own banker as part of Burns Funding, analyze the credit worthiness of any individual. And I can enhance that credit worthiness by fixing their credit, by improving their credit, by bringing more primary trade lines in. And then I even have the ability to increase their income by joint venturing with them, putting them into one of my companies and issuing what they call a deferred 1099 to further enhance. And my banker takes the algorithms generated from all of the information on the 3 credit reports, and it comes up with a formula based upon our lenders, what they like to see. And we issue then within 24 to 48 hours about within a 10% accuracy what amount of unrestricted, unsecured capital the individual can get. And we've seen it between 100 and now 250,000 with my recent young woman who is the pharmacist who received $250,000. Well, that's twice her annual income. And she had a credit bump 5 years ago. We fixed it all. And she did a beautiful testimonial on LinkedIn for me. I just read it yesterday and it was like so nice. And there are many people out there could use this. Now, what we then do is I want to make sure I get my capital paid back because I'm on the hook with my lenders for that individual, even though it's their credit ostensibly that received the stacked loans. I'm on the hook ultimately. So I came up with this solution. Well, how do I pay myself back in the event that whatever business that they want to get into or they change their minds or whatever? How do I pay back the debts that have accumulated, like $250,000, for instance? Well, what I have done is I have, through research and a lot of luck, to tell you the truth, almost like I'd rather be lucky than smart. I found online stores, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Shopifys, and people have been making a fortune for years. It's not just a new phenomenon, but, look at Bezos. I mean, the second richest or first richest, wealthiest person in the world, from online. Well, I found providers of these online stores that I could invest in passively and then provide the capital, not only just to buy the store, but also to provide the inventory. And then they do everything. And then they take a nice chunk of it for managing as a third party. Well, the profits are off the charts. So as I go, whoa, this is great. But it takes 2, 3, 4 months before the store is cash flowing. And I'm talking $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month in pure cash flow, which we share with the provider. So I said, well, okay, so that means I'm going to be stuck paying the freight and all these bills come due on all of the 10 stackable loans until the stores are kicking in. So then I said, well, how can I change that? And it turns out I was introduced to what they call the crypto bots. Now, crypto, of course, everybody's excited about it and they get into it and they don't know what they're doing. People make and lose fortunes all the time. Well, I was thinking, well, the object here is for me to generate income. And crypto bots, that's what they do. You have two bots of two different cryptocurrencies, and they trade back and forth 100 times, 200, 300 times a day, making an infinitesimal amount of money, which is in onto the win column and saved. Over the course of a day, I can earn as much as 1% of whatever I have in the form of bots, which become income. So if I threw 20, 30, 40,000 worth of bots, I'm making $200, $300, $400 a day in passive income. I'm still retaining the asset, which is fantastic because crypto has traditionally gone up in value. So that becomes a wealth builder too. But in the meantime, I have the cash income to support 100% of the debt that bought the stores and the crypto in the first place. It's kind of like this whole circle. And so far, so good. I'm thrilled to death. Now, I'm sure I'll find other passive income, but right now, this is fantastic because it's doing two things. It's paying back the loan that bought the assets in the first place. These assets then become appreciable assets. The stores, for instance, can be sold for 3 to 5 times the net profit in a couple of years after their season. And crypto is what crypto is. You can turn around and sell it all and buy a business or do whatever you want, or live very well and leverage the pure cash flow that's coming from these passive assets. So this becomes the way to pay myself back, but it also becomes something that somebody I put into business gets to participate on, because when I have been repaid the amount of money that paid for all this out of the income and all the other kind of stuff, I then split 50-50 with my entrepreneur that I put into business. They put exactly zero out of their pockets, and they have an income for years and years on the two businesses that I've set up, let alone what they want to do with their share and start their own business, live off of it. So it's a really interesting formula.
Yeah. So the model overall, I mean, you've obviously, what I like about it is that there's no like alchemy in the back that you can't understand. Like it's pretty straightforward. Like everything matches, and the system of it makes sense. So it's not saying, and not saying it's easy to pull off, right? I mean, this is many years of your contacts, of your putting together deals, and of your and also of the execution side of things, right? Of being able to do
the trust factor. I've got great trust factors from all of my lenders and my banker. And then when you have great testimonials, like I'm getting from this woman, this pharmacist, I couldn't have written it better myself. Now the trick is I need to get the word out at them. And this is very helpful for me to be able to share the procedure, because I'm only limited by the amount of people that want to take my money and to be supported through this passive income and the opportunity to become entrepreneurs if they have never had that opportunity before.
What are some of the things that you look for in a great partner in this case, or a great entrepreneur to put in a business? Like, what are some of the, whether it's traits, background, history, like what are some of the things you look for?
I look for someone who is ambitious, but might have been cautious and basically talk themselves out of having this opportunity. I like to convince them otherwise. And when I take away the challenges, they don't have to leave their job. They can stay there. I mean, they're going to get bored to death if they're making more money off the passive than they are from their business. But then I want them to kind of stretch their minds a little bit and say, if I didn't need to earn the paycheck and the benefits and stuff, what would I be doing? Wouldn't I go into something that I had studied in school that I'm not even not even close to doing now, which is the case in most cases that I've seen. Am I going to go into something I really love to give back? Am I going to be donate? Am I going to be a humanitarian or a philanthropist? I think we can create an entire new generation of people who give back if we simply take the problem of earning a living and figuring it out for them. And this program does that.
And then I know that you have like certain types of entrepreneurs that maybe have also been maybe underrepresented or just aren't in the entrepreneurial space as much, and then or don't necessarily have as much access to capital, things like that. Like, can you speak on that a little bit more?
Certainly. So I have two daughters who've given me 9 grandchildren, 4 of whom are granddaughters. And I've always advocated not depending on someone else to support you. Make your own money, especially with men. And they, thank goodness, they have married well and have great husbands. But in the meantime, I wanted them to be financially independent in their own right and encourage that. And I've seen over and over again young women who just don't have a chance. They studied something in school, accumulated huge school debt, and then couldn't get a job for their lives to get into something that they'd studied. And then with COVID and everything else, even the waitress jobs and stuff disappeared because restaurants were shut down. They've just had every single block thrown their way. To be a successful young woman entrepreneur, I mean, that's almost an oxymoron. There are, of course, but they have every imaginable roadblock. I'm here to say that I'm eliminating those roadblocks. As long as you haven't crushed your credit completely and can allow me to rebuild it if you have, and to give you the building blocks to go do it, you can have your cake and eat it too. Just got to get the word out.
And so looking at, it sounds to me like you might be somewhat agnostic on this, but maybe not. I don't know. So what types of businesses are you most interested in? You mentioned crypto. You mentioned obviously some things that are going to can solve some problems in the marine biology landscape. I mean, are there any specific sectors you're looking for versus others?
I'm a generalist in entrepreneurship. Like I said,
I figured that. I was like, when you were talking about solving shark problems, I'm like, I haven't heard that one before, Peter. I've talked to a lot of people.
That's an unusual, but
I'm just saying, thousands of interviews. That's the first one of those.
Think about all of the little beach communities that depend on tourism, and all of a sudden,
I'm in. By the way, I'm scared of sharks, so I'm on your team. I'm on your team. I grew up with Jaws. I'm on your team on this one. Yeah. Somebody out there, respond to this one.
Yeah.
But seriously,
there's so many other ones. Like for instance, we had talked about your own profession. This is actually sponsored content. Well, that's a whole business. That's a whole business because there are other providers out there that write, articles, and they have magazines and they have online, but no one knows where to go to all of them. You could create an agency specific to sponsored marketing, sponsored advertising, of which you'd be a huge component. I mean, I'd like to start that business with you because every small business needs it. We create our own customer base. Every business that I start by funding and putting them into my program becomes a client of ours. And since I require my ability to allocate the resources that I'm loaning in the first place, I'll buy the talent and the service from people like you with that money, with part of that money. So, to go back to your question, I am agnostic. I love all businesses.
That's exciting. So what I know you have quite a few, but is there any other like entrepreneurs or businesses that you've kind of put out there that you like to highlight or just bring up and give them a little bit of love as you're on here, kind of showcasing some of the projects?
Let me just do this. I'm just going to go onto my website right now. And what I have done is my website is kind of a catch-all. And what it does is it has my history, my businesses that I currently have. I run about a dozen businesses right now simultaneously. But what I also have is new projects, which is a tab. And on these new projects, I'm just going to go down. And these are ones that I've researched to the point where I like to start them, but I need to have someone to run them for me. So if they become a millennial queen, or I now have gender-specific startup kings. So I did that because so many men were trying to sneak into the millennial queen. So I have startup kings. I have a former NHL All-American hockey player who I have lent $164,000, and he has an invention he's been trying for 10 years to get off the ground, and he's show up all these angel places and no one give him the time of day. I got him the money. He's paying his vendors. He's going to be a happy camper. He's a 68-year-old former professional athlete. You take her, you take the pharmacy, you take some of the other people that I've got in there. There's hundreds of millions of people in the United States. We entrepreneurs are the backbone of this country, of the world, indeed. So we have to go back to our roots and help these people start. But some of the examples of some of the businesses, e-bikes. Okay, so I'm kind of like the grandfather of e-bikes and scooters and everything else, because I was the one that brought mopeds to the United States in 1977 as a college project and rented them at American Resorts. That was the basis of my first fortune, was the moped rentals. Well, of course, it's evolved to scooters, to e-bikes, all that good stuff. Well, one business that I thought was fantastic was to get back into the e-bikes, but to actually do tours, guided tours with a tour guide and people following behind on the e-bikes for whatever area you're in to go on these little trips. It's safe. You get to experience the e-bikes. It's enormously profitable. So I kind of put that as on my wish list. I have, the Vetrepreneur Company. Now, this is the same thing that I'm doing with the Millennial Queens and Startup Kings, but for veterans leaving the military, transitioning to civilian life. Well, they know how to take orders. They know how to take that hill and execute. And for most parts, they have kept their credit clean. Veterans are perfect for me to put into business. So the Vetrepreneur Program is something I'd like to start. Luxury athletic coaching. What does that mean? I found a lot of these young women that I wanted to put in Millennial Queens were fantastic athletes, tennis players, soccer players, this, everything else. So I thought, people will pay anything for their kids to get the edge. What if we create an elite coaching thing with their specific expertise, let them earn money having pre-booked to all these wealthy parents that we create the website and the marketing and things like that. This will be a way for them to keep their love and profit by it after their school careers are over. Pet transportation via private aviation. What does this mean? Well, airlines used to fly pets all the time. What people didn't realize is they were killing a lot of those pets, especially the short-snouted pets. And no one knew that until the FTA, Federal Transportation Association, required all airlines to tell how many animals that they killed. And this was an uproar with the consumers. They said, what's going on? So what I did is I put together pet jets, of all things, where you take private transportation for some of the wealthier people who could transport their pets the same time that they did by private aviation. Now, was it more expensive? Sure it was. However, was it something that would ensure that their pets would live? Yes, it was. So that became something that I have. Let's see. Okay, so luxury product placement program for villas. Okay, so I owned 4 or 5 multi-million-dollar residences during my time I was married years and years ago. And those beautiful villas and mansions were filled to the brim with really expensive stuff. So I got into one of my travel companies that actually brought me out here to La Jolla, where I made a deal where I could take empty time and remarket it in these luxury villas, because it turns out luxury villas are only rented 26% of the time. So you have 74% that's empty. Well, how could I grab that time for no cash to remarket it and make a profit? That was the problem that I solved. And it was, I simply went back to my own experience with Frette linens, which is $7,000 a bedroom and bathroom in a home. You have 10 bedrooms, it costs you $70,000. You have Cristoffi silverware, all of those things that these homes had to replace and in their furnished homes that they rented out for $3,000 or $5,000 a day. So I said, What if I make a deal and become a product placement for these luxury goods? Because the people that own the homes obviously are clients, but the people that rent have homes like that. Anyway, I put this whole thing together, and I ended up having 982 homes where I had blocks of time that I trade. It would be like a barter deal. I'd say $100,000 worth of linens and this kind of stuff, and I want a credit of $100,000 of your time that's empty, subject to availability. Well, the great thing is the product placement luxury providers gave it to me at like 30% of retail. So I had a 70% margin. So I could literally trade it for the 100 grand, but I only paid 30. I could lower the price to like 40% off. I could rent someone's house cheaper than they could themselves, but they were happy because they had a bunch of goods that they didn't have to pay for. So that's something that could totally be expanded. I just haven't had the time, and I need to find people to help me go do that. Med spa product, Vietnamese, E-Factor relaunch. I mean, there's
This is awesome. And that's why I wanted you to go through this list, because we've talked before. And when you talk about needing people, and when you talk about needing talent, and when you talk about, individuals to help go off and build these companies, I mean, you're not joking. Like you have them. You're naming them. I mean, the capital side of that, you figured out the financing. Now it's really just about finding the people.
Exactly. And so the millennial queenmaker or the startup king can also provide, if someone really hates their job and doesn't want to leave it, they can work for me in these particular applications with the money I'm going to loan them. You see, I'll just allocate $3,000-4,000 a month that they can use to work for me, get these going, and then decide if they would like to get into this business, because I'm open to joint ventures on everything. I can't do it myself, nor do I want to.
Yeah. And I know one of the things that we've talked about before is that I know you do a bunch of writing, and that you've also, you're also kind of getting back into the academic side of things. Like, tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I have been picked by entrepreneur.com to be a columnist, which is great. So every month I write about something, and I write a lot of blogs on my own, and they get distributed through my social media, which is great, because actually all of the 36 people that are going through my program right now are all organic. I've had no marketing whatsoever. I'm going to have to come up with a marketing plan myself, but I don't want to be somebody out there like in a crowded field. Like, it's red ocean. Everybody is selling their stuff, and that's not who I am. I like the blue ocean stuff. I'm offering a very unique application to get into business from a way that apparently no one else has thought of it before. So my writing is important, and I need to get the word out there. The academics, I just enjoy teaching because, I got my start when I was at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, and I had been awarded an ROTC scholarship, also West Point appointment, which I gave back, took the ROTC. And while I was a first-year student at UVA, I was bored to death because I was taking like Latin and U.S. foreign diplomacy since 1914, and just all these things that were so obscure. And I'm a business guy. I'd been, trained infantry soldier and did all this stuff. And all of a sudden I'm in bucolic Charlottesville, Virginia, and it's beautiful and quiet. And Thomas Jefferson started it in 1813 or so, or 19, whatever. And I'm bored to death. So I saw the school register, and I saw an entrepreneurship class, but it was only available in the fourth-year student who is already a member of the McIntire School of Commerce, which at the time, and probably even now, is number one in the United States for undergraduate. I don't pay any attention to rules. I know that's terrible, and I'm admitting it. Oh well. I've always just done my own thing. So I knock on the door of the professor at the McIntire School of Commerce, and I said, "Professor, I'm Peter Burns. Like to take your class in entrepreneurship. Tell me how I can do that." And he looked at me, and said, "I don't recognize you, Mr. Burns." And I said, he goes, "I know all 100 students in the McIntire School." And I said, "Oh no, I'm a first year student, and I won't be eligible for McIntire for 2 more years." And he said, well, you can't take my class. You have to be in McIntyre. And then you got to pretty much wait around the block to get in because it's like super popular. As a senior, I said, no, let me tell you who I am. And I started kind of sharing with him a little bit my history. I had many, many successful businesses at a very early age. And just because I was in the Army and at college, this wasn't going to stop me there. So he had been a very successful businessman and actually made $50 million having his own public company prior to entering academia. So he understood me. However, he also can't break all the rules and look like, he was favored. He goes, I'll tell you what I'll do, Mr. Burns. I'll invite you to class. And if you can convince all of the students that had to work their asses off to get into McIntyre and then get into my class, and they let you in, I let you in. Needless to say, I got
gave you a shot. That's awesome.
I got into class. I did my business plan. Of course, I didn't know how to do a business plan, so I picked the smartest guys in those fields to be part of my team. And then the law changed about mopeds in the United States while I was at school, just prior to taking my class. So, like I said, I'd rather be lucky than smart. I had a moped, but the moped was registered as a motorcycle. So I had to have insurance and this and everything else for this little putt-putt that only went 25 miles an hour. Well, moped legislation changed, and 35 states allowed any driver's license or learner's permit to use a moped. What did that start? That had my little light bulb on, and I go, I rent them because now anybody can do them. And I picked Nantucket, which is my summer home for years, as the place I did my business plan. So I did everything perfectly. I got everything all set. And then I got my 1A in college. I have a 0.5 GPA. It's probably still, after 40 years, it's probably the lowest. Yeah. But and then I took $5,000 that I had accumulated hazardous duty pay in the military. At least they did way back when. If you jumped out of planes or did something dangerous, they pay you extra money. I had accumulated $5,000. I bought 15 mopeds, rented a dirt lot, got a little thrift box and a table at the thrift store for 50 cents, set up. And in 10 weeks, I'd made $55,000. I invested, and it's like, you're 19. This is
That's big money.
It's a lot of money. And, of course, I attracted all the attention. I learned a lot of hard lessons. Your business plan is worthless, except as a training exercise to perhaps see what pitfalls you have. Because I had every pitfall in the world. No one told me that the board of selectmen run by the mayor was in the bicycle rental business, and that I was impeding on his territory that he had generationally. So he literally created a new law after I'd set up and spent all my money. I was making money hand over fist that banned moped rentals from Nantucket, which you can't really do that. And, he thought he'd bulldoze this over. He had a marshal come and serve me. The cease and desist. It's like, that ain't happening. So I went to my landlord, who happened to be Walter Beinecke Jr., the S&H Green Stamp heir who owned all of Nantucket. His major domo, Nancy Severance, gave me their attorney, who was a fantastic lawyer, Irish like I am, Irish descent, and he spent his life going after the town officials on doing things just like this because they had offended him years before. And he just spent his life and made a lot of money, and he took my case, and I whooped him good. I got temporary injunction, permanent injunction. I sued and won $1 million for fraud and deception and everything else. Took years, of course. Never collected on that, but I was allowed to work, and that propelled me into 100 locations, and all this stuff. It created the whole foundation for what I'm doing, 50 years later, including I lectured the same class till my professor retired, and I told him he was right about me for 10 years, first and second semesters. And so that became my love for teaching, which extended when I was at Barron Honors College at ASU and then college. And now I'm going to get back into it after all these years.
Man, That's exciting, Peter, and I'm just laughing here because leave it to you to go knocking like I'm not going to follow the rules. I just want to be in this class.
I
Leave
never,
it to you to just go
never,
do that, knock on the door like, yeah, but how about you
yeah,
just let me in?
yeah. You know what? Because most people are too timid. They
Yeah,
just accept everything as status quo, and like, no, why would I do that? I mean, if I want something, I'm going to figure out how to get it, and that's just my nature.
it's awesome. So, Peter, I just have to say, really, it has been great having you on the show. I'd like you to maybe just take a moment, and there'll be people watching this that are interested in connecting. They'll want to learn more about the funding, how that works, also the business ideas, and just connect with you and your team. I mean, what's the best way for people to do that?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, which has been very favorable, just under Peter Burns III. But I do have a website, and that's just peterjburns3.com. And
Mhm.
you can contact me there. You can read all about it. You can see all my programs. You know, I've been also very fortunate to get an awful lot of press and stuff like that. If you just Google me, Peter J. Burns III, you can read all about the stuff that I'm involved with.
Perfect. And we'll put all that information in the show notes, by the way, so the audience can just click on it and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time engaging with the Mission Matters platform, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and sharing why they do what they do, like what wakes them up in the morning, gets them fired up to go out there into the marketplace and into the world, and really just to make a difference, to spend their life energy on improving it for all of us. If that's the type of content that you're into, and if that excites you, we definitely welcome you to hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And remember, we'll put all the website and all the other stuff so you can connect with Peter and his team on the bottom in those show notes. So definitely check that out. And Peter, again, really, it has been a pleasure spending this time with you today, and look forward to talking to you more about your business concepts. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. It was very, very nice to have this opportunity.